or first? That is the question. Toastmaster Mark Ahlers ponders this morning as he presents Connecting with Storytelling, which is a project from the Presentation Mastery Path. The speech is titled Last and First. Please welcome distinguished Toastmaster Mark Ahlers.
My life has been a series of last and first, but I'm never quite sure in which order they will arrive. For example, at age 10, it was definitely last that came first for me when I competed in foot races with my brothers. No matter how hard I tried, I always crossed the finish line last. You see, back then, I had a handicap. I was overweight. Fortunately for me, my family was sympathetic to my situation. My older brother Doug would greet me at the finish line and offer me a high five along with his 4 favorite words of encouragement. Nice try, fat boy. My dad had his own special words of encouragement. Well, Mark, every track team needs a good shot put and discus. With your build, I think you'll be a natural. Well, fortunately for me, as I got older, my metabolism changed, and I went from being fat to husky, and finally to normal. Funny thing, as my weight decreased, my foot speed and endurance increased. So much so that I made the varsity cross-country team as a freshman. And 2 years later, my teammates and I turned what had been a last for me into a first, as we were the first team in our school's history to compete in the state finals. All right. But not every situation has progressed from last to first for me. For example, with the last name of Ahlers, I was always first in the alphabet in both grade school and high school. Back then, being first in the alphabet usually meant sitting in the first row, being the first student called on for most questions. And worst of all, being the first student selected to sing solo in Miss Wagner's mandatory vocal classes. For a young man who was incredibly shy and noticeably lacking in vocal skills, being first wasn't all that satisfying. So as you might imagine, when I got to college, I was relieved when I no longer had to sit in alphabetical order. In fact, with no particular seating arrangement required, I made it a point to always sit in the last row. Not only that, I developed my own special slouching and resting techniques, so that most professors couldn't even see me in the back of the class. My techniques worked so well that I wasn't called on once during freshman year. I almost made it all the way through sophomore year, until I slipped up on Friday afternoon and failed to follow my normal routine. That day, my mind was focused on my duties for the cake party that night. Professor Comer apparently mistook my intense concentration on the cake party as interest in the question he had posed to the because he pointed to me in the last row and said, "Son, I can tell by the look on your face that you've been thinking intently about the question that I posed. Please share with us what you've been thinking." Well, I wasn't sure how to respond. After a long pause, I finally said, "Well, sir, the truth is, I was trying to decide whether to serve Budweiser or Pabst at the cake party." As you might imagine, my classmates were quite amused by my candor. But what surprised me even more was that Professor Comer joined right in with the laughter. It wasn't until I got my grade several weeks ago that I realized Professor Comer didn't get mad. but he certainly did get even. But despite that, I was proud of myself. I had progressed from one of the first row students in high school to one of the esteemed members of the last row in college. And those last row skills came in handy when I arrived at Toastmasters. After my first dismal attempt to answer a table topics question, hiding out in the last row seemed like a merciful thing to do. Not only for me, for my fellow club members. But then I made a critical mistake. I volunteered to be club treasurer. Suddenly, I had to show up each week, sit in the same spot. I became an easy target for the table topics master. But when the possibility of becoming club president arose, I quickly seized the opportunity. I figured it was my best chance to avoid table topics. Even if it only lasted for 6 months. Well, like all good things, my job as club president in the convenient hiding spot it afforded me in the first row quickly came to an end. Since then, I've ventured back into the table topics arena, and I've often exited that arena in much the same way Theodore Roosevelt described in his Man in the Arena speech, with my face marred by dust and sweat and blood. Although challenging, those experiences have given me the mettle to compete here today. And for that, I'm truly grateful. Because whether I finish first and enjoy the thrill of victory, or last and suffer the agony of defeat, really doesn't matter. What matters is that I continue to enter the arena and strive valiantly. If I do that, I'm convinced I'll receive the real rewards that my soul craves. And just as Theodore Roosevelt explained, my place will no longer be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Mr. Toastmaster.